knows how you come across somebody once in a while you shouldn't have messed with? That's me.
I am not an African American.
You're Oreo cookie. White in the inside and black on the outside.
I don't have an afro. I have an Amerifro.
Talking that idiotic stuff you talk about, I will slap you.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Black as the ace of spades, but 100% American.
Heard around the world by everybody and their mama. The Jesse Lee Peterson Radio Show.
Uniting the races with truth instead of dividing them with lies. We also rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. I am Jesse Lee Peterson. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being with me. Hope you had a good weekend. It was something else for me. We'll get into that a little later. Jam-packed show for you today. You can get involved by calling 888-77-53-773. 888-77-JESSE. Gotta have courage, folks. If we ever needed men and women of this great nation to be of great courage, it is now. We need it now. We need courage. And as I've said before, we need to get ahead of the issues. Conservative Christians, it seems as though we are always on the back burner. We're always trying to catch up to what the liberals are doing. We're always trying to save ourselves. But at some point, we got to get ahead of the issues, and they need to be fighting back, all right? We need to have great courage. And I have with me a man that has great courage, a young man, someone I respect a lot. And you've seen him on Fox News and CNN. You heard him on different radio shows. He is a man of great courage, a good example for us all. Ben Shapiro is with me, editor-at-large of Breitbart.com, co-host of the Heidi Harris Show in Los Angeles and Orange County. He is the national best-selling author of multiple books, including his new book, Bullies. Very interesting book. We're going to tell you how to get it. Everybody and their mama should get a copy of this book. Get a dozen copies and give them out for presents and gifts, and just for folks to read. Even give them to the liberals, too. It'll be good for them. How the left culture of fear and intimidation silence America. And again, we're going to I wanted to talk to Ben a few minutes here about this great book. Ben, good morning, sir. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Ben, I have the utmost respect for you. When I grow up, I want to be just like you.
Well, right back at you. You know, I appreciate everything that you do and everything you stand for.
Thank you very much. Sarah Palin said of your book, I urge people to read Ben's book and apply the lessons he's put forward on how to deal with the left. It is also strongly recommended by Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, Michelle Malkin, I believe it says, and many others. It has already hit the New York Times bestseller list. How does it feel to have a book on New York Times bestseller list?
Well, I mean, obviously it was a thrill. There was the upside was that it was a bestseller. The downside is that my name appeared in the New York Times. So, you know, this is the triumph and tragedy of
yeah.
working in the media.
That's right, and I know you have more than one that made the list. I want to get into your book. Are there any examples of bullying by the left that has gotten your attention since Barack Obama has been inaugurated?
Every day. I mean, it is amazing that, and I want to thank President Obama for being a living example of everything I talk about in the book and giving me lots of fodder. But what he's been doing every single day is he's been applying. Everybody thinks that it's a Democratic playbook. There is no playbook. There is actually a Democratic paragraph. It's like on one page. And all it is demonize your opponent. You can actually do it in 3 words. Demonize your opponent. What President Obama does on every single issue is he essentially says if you disagree with him on policy, It's not because you have an honest disagreement on policy. It's because you're a bad person.
Yeah.
So if you look at what he's been doing on immigration, what he's saying is that if you disagree with him, that we shouldn't worry about our border. We should just give citizenship to everybody who's already here. That's not because you have legitimate worries about the fiscal sanity of the country. It's not because you worry about the culture of the country. It's not because you believe that people ought to be integrated into society. It's not because of any of that. It's because you hate family. That's really what it's all about. That's why President Obama flew to De La Salle High School in Las Vegas. That's why President Obama said near the end of the speech, this issue is going to get real emotional. And when it gets emotional, it'll turn into us versus them. What do you think he's talking about? Implying that those of us who disagree with him are racist. That's
right. You know, what's interesting, Ben, recently he attacked Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and others, saying that the Republicans need to, in essence, I don't have it in front of me, that the Republicans need to stop listening to Fox News and Rush Limbaugh and others and start going along with what he wants them to do.
Yeah, he actually said more than that. What he actually said is that there's this perverse incentive structure that's been created by Fox News and Talk Radio and Rush, and that incentive structure, quote-unquote, has to be changed. That's a veiled threat. I mean, this is a president who has attempted to use the power of his office to leverage boycotts against Fox News, against Rush Limbaugh. This is somebody who's not interested in having a political debate. This is somebody who simply wants to silence people on the other side of the aisle. And this is the difference, really, between the left and the right. We truly believe in the First Amendment. I like MSNBC being there. I think it's a good thing that MSNBC is there because I want to hear what Al Sharpton is saying because, you know, the more people hear of Al Sharpton, the dumber they realize what he's saying it is.
Yes.
And I think that that's a very important thing. The left doesn't want that. The left isn't interested in Fox News being there. They want Fox News shut down, silenced, quashed. They want Rush Limbaugh off the air. And everything they do is geared toward that. That's why I call them bullies. That's why I call them thugs. Everything that they're doing is geared toward ending political conversation in the country. Because when they call you a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe, what they're really saying is you are unworthy of even being in the same political room with me. You must adopt my agenda because if you don't, then you're just simply unworthy of even being in the same debate. And that's something that we on the right historically have not done. But the truth is, what we need to recognize is that once you use that tactic, now you do not get to be part of the political debate. Once they use that tactic, they are the bullies. They are the thugs. They are the people who do not get treated with civility. I said this on Sean's show, a couple weeks ago. I said that civility is like the Geneva Conventions. The Geneva Conventions are designed to keep people in uniform. You get treated with certain privileges if you're in uniform and you're an enemy soldier. The minute you step out of uniform and you start acting like a terrorist, Geneva doesn't apply to you. It can send you to Gitmo and it can do all sorts of fun things to you.
Yes.
The same thing applies to civility. Once you step out of the realm of let's figure out, have a policy discussion, once you step out of that, once you get away from let's try and figure out the best solution for all Americans, and you get into if you disagree with me, it's because you hate kids, like President Obama has been doing with Sandy Hook, then you no longer get treated with civility. The era of civility is over. The Democrats ended it, and we better recognize it or we're going to continue to lose.
Amazing. You're absolutely right. I want to play a soundbite. I saw you the other day or maybe a few days ago on CNN with Piers Morgan, and I thought that the way you handled that was something else, about 2 weeks or so ago now. But I want to play that and get your response to it, and I want my audience to hear it just in case they didn't see it. Hold on there.
So why am I off the rails, Mr. Shapiro?
Honestly, Piers, you've kind of been a bully on this issue because what you do, and I've seen it repeatedly on your show, I watch your show, and I've seen it repeatedly, what you tend to do is you tend to demonize people who differ from you politically by standing on the graves of the children of Sandy Hook, saying they don't seem to care enough about the dead kids. If they cared more about the dead kids, they would agree with you on policy. I think we can have a rational political conversation about balancing rights and risks and rewards of all of these different policies, but I don't think that what we need to do is demonize people on the other side as being unfeeling about what happened in Sandy Hook.
How dare you accuse me of standing on the graves of the children that died there? How dare you?
I've seen you do it repeatedly, Piers.
Like I say, how dare you?
Well, I mean, you can keep saying that, but you've done it repeatedly.
Tell me why you need one.
I told you why the general population of America, law-abiding citizens,
why do they need those weapons?
They need them for the prospective possibility of resistance to tyranny, which is not a concern today. It may not be a concern tomorrow.
Where are you expecting the tyranny to come from?
It could come from the United States because governments have gone tyrannical before.
Do you understand how absurd you sound?
Here's where you go into the absurd and the bullying. You're absurd. You're stupid. I understand that.
I'm not the one that came in here and accused you of standing on the graves of dead children.
Because
That's
you're the one
what I
who's
call
doing that.
Bullying.
Punching
That's
back
what I
twice as
call
hard.
bullying.
You know what I call it? Punching back twice as hard in the words of President Obama.
That's what I call bullying. And
this
the way
is astonishing.
What's astonishing
What's
about
astonishing about it is that for weeks now, you have been saying that anybody who disagrees with your position is absurd, idiotic, and doesn't care about the dead kids in Sandy Hook. And then when I say that that's a bully tactic, you turn around and say, I'm bullying you for saying that. It's absurd. It's ridiculous.
All I can say, Ben, is wow. You handled him perfectly. Let me take a quick break, and I'll let you respond. We come back, and I'll let you respond to that. We're going to tell the folks how to get your book. Back in a moment, folks.
Life is so strange when it's changing, yes indeed. Well, I've seen the hard times and the pressure's been on me. But I keep on working like a working man do. And I've got my act together.
Okay, welcome back. I am excited. I am talking to a man of great courage, a young man. Ben Shapiro is with me, best-selling author, and he has a brand new book out, Bullies, How the Left Culture of Fear and Intimidation Silence America. Ben, let me first say congratulations on your radio show.
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, it's actually called The Morning Answer now, and there are three of us. It's me, a liberal we beat up on every day, and Heidi Harris. So it's a lot of fun on KRLA 870 if you're in the Los Angeles area, or KTIE 590 if you're in Orange County, and you can listen online at either of those websites.
I know Heidi very well. I love her. She's a good, strong woman. I have a lot of respect. Say hello for me, all right?
I definitely will.
I want to go quickly back to that shootout with Piers Morgan. He had nothing to say but name calling and attack, and you were sharp and quick. And I thought the guy was going to get up and run out of the room there for a minute.
Well, Piers is a really good example of how to debate the left. The first thing that you have to do, they have that one tactic, right, which is to demonize you and to use emotional appeals and to make it seem like you don't care about gays, blacks, Hispanics, disabled, whatever it is that they want to make you seem like. You have to hit them with that tactic immediately.
Yes.
You have to take that out of their repertoire. So when I opened the interview by saying to Piers, look, this is what you do, and I know you do it, he can't use that tactic anymore because now it's clear to the audience what kind of tactic he's using.
Wow.
The next thing to do is once that's out of his repertoire and it's now a debate, you really have to spend the rest of the debate debunking the tactics more than debunking the other person's facts.
Yeah.
Because it's like a magic show for the left. Everything they don't have facts or evidence to support their position. It's all sleight of hand. So instead of participating in the magic show, instead of being kind of the prop they use to distract folks while they stand over here calling us racist, sexist, bigot, homophobes, we have to sit there and be the guy in the back of the magic show who says, okay, now I understand what you're doing. What you're doing is reversing the logic. I understand what you're doing now. You're making an emotional appeal, right? In that second clip that you played there, where he starts saying, you know how absurd you sound? And I say, well, Piers, this is where you do the routine where you start calling people absurd and ridiculous because you disagree with them instead of making an argument. And by doing that, it becomes clear to the audience, hey, wait a second, that's exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
So debunking their tactics is just more important, actually, than debunking their arguments.
I think Obama once said of that, you shoot them with their gun, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you got to punch back twice as hard.
Yeah.
And you really have to not – the key in any fight, you got to frame your opponent. You got to frame the narrative. The other thing that I did in that interview is I took out a copy of the Constitution and I handed it to Piers. Now, the purpose of that, it wasn't just a stunt. The reason that I pulled out the Constitution and handed it to him is because the biggest philosophical inconsistency in the left's position is that they pretend they like the Second Amendment while saying that guns are unbelievably dangerous and should be banned. You can't have it both ways. And so by handing him the Constitution, I was trapping him. Now he suddenly had to discuss why it is that he likes the Second Amendment. And he couldn't defend it. There was no way for him to defend it because he doesn't like the Second Amendment. He thinks the Second Amendment is a horrible idea. And it was clear from the interview that that was the case. So I have what I call the 10 rules of debating a liberal, and I'm probably going to do a piece on it and put it up on my website. But the key, more than anything else, is to not be afraid of them and to frame your opponent for who they are. It is unbelievable. Do you want to know why the mainstream media is so powerful? It's because of Republicans, not because of the mainstream media. It's because we continue to allow them to present themselves as though they're objective. We have Republican debates and have George Stephanopoulos moderating. It's insane. The only reason to appear on George Stephanopoulos or on Piers Morgan is to destroy them. Really, that is the only reason to appear on them. If one person got on, I would pay money to be on with George Stephanopoulos, because I would just want 30 seconds to say to him at the beginning of the interview, George, here's the deal. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it. Be polite always. I really appreciate it. I thank you. But before we start, I just want to point out, you try to portray yourself as an objective journalist. You are a guy who was in the Clinton war room. You're somebody who takes hints from the Obama administration and participates in their campaigns. You're good friends with President Obama. So if I question the premises of your questions, it's not because I'm being combative. It's just because it's important that the audience should know where you stand politically, because they know where I stand politically. So all I'm asking for is a little honesty up front.
Wow. Everybody and their mama want to know, and I'm reading some emails here right now, some tweets and things. How did you develop this type of understanding of courage, especially being so young?
Well, I was brought up in a house with two very strong parents, and I studied. One of my mentors was Andrew Breitbart. Andrew, more than anybody else, really taught me to walk toward the fire, as you like to put it. Don't be afraid of their narrative. Don't be afraid of their name calling.
Yeah.
And then obviously I've spent the vast majority of my life reading heavily and studying heavily, and going to Harvard Law School didn't hurt. I mean, that certainly honed some arguing skills and debating skills. But a lot of it just comes from not being afraid. It really comes from being secure in your knowledge. And that, by the way, comes from knowing things. I mean, what we see on our side of the aisle is an attempt to pretend we know things that we don't, or really an ability to obscure what we do know. I think one of the biggest things that is very important for people to know going into debate, and what you know and what you don't. There was a point in that debate with Piers in which Piers pulled out a letter from Ronald Reagan about assault weapons. I'd never heard of this thing. I didn't know what he was talking about. I didn't know where it came from. And he says to me, well, Ronald Reagan supported an assault weapons ban. And I said, well, no, I didn't know that, Piers. And he said, well, have you seen this letter? I said, no, why don't you read it to me? Because it was clear he was going there anyway.
Right.
And so he goes ahead and he reads it. And at the end, I said, okay, so? And he had no comeback. Now, if I had pretended to know what Ronald Reagan's position was on the issue, he could have hit me with it on the other side, right? I could have said, oh, well, I'm sure Ronald Reagan didn't support assault weapons bans. And he could have come back and said, oh, but you're wrong. Of course he did. Never pretend to know something that you don't. It's a huge thing.
Wow.
If you don't know something, come back and say, look, I don't know. And I'm not going to comment on things which I don't know about. And if you ask me to comment on something I don't know about, you're being a bad interviewer. I mean, nobody can comment on things that they don't know about. So if you want to inform me, I'll take your word for it. If you want to inform me, then let me think about it. I can come back to you with a considered position. It is not my job to know everything. It's my job to know enough to discuss the issues on which I purport to be an expert.
That's amazing. 100% true, but amazing. We're running out of time here. Tell the folks how to get this book, Bully, and others that you have written as well.
Bullies, you can get everywhere right now. It's on Amazon.com. It's been a #1 bestseller on Amazon. It was on the New York Times bestseller list. So walk into a local bookstore. They should have copies. If they don't, tell them they ought to order them and put them up front, because they do with my book what they do with all conservative books, which is hide them in the back. So, you should be able to get it everywhere. And you can get all my other books, on Amazon or your local bookstore as well. They are Brainwashed, which is about indoctrination on college campuses. Born Generation, about social liberalism. Project President, which is actually a nonpartisan book about image making in presidential politics. And Primetime Propaganda, which was kind of an inside scoop on how Hollywood biases shows and keeps conservatives out of the business in order to push their political agenda.
And your Twitter handle is at Ben Shapiro, right?
Exactly.
Okay. Well, man, I wish you well. I'm glad you're out there. And the book, there are so many examples of bullying, and I do want the people to read it. You write about Chick-fil-A and the gay marriages and issue and all those things. I wish you well. Thank you for what you do, and thanks for coming on. We'll have you back again.
Sounds great. You're the best. Talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. Okay, folks, we're going to take a break. 888-7753-773. Back in a moment.